Hey guys, welcome. This video, let me move myself up. There we go. This video is to help you with creating your cutting board orthographic sketch using the Tinkercad. So let's jump on in. You've obviously clicked on this link already for this video, but let's go ahead and jump into Tinkercad and start making it. So I'm going to go to Designs. We're going to look down here on New. And then 3D Design. Okay. And here we go. First thing, change the name. Cutting board. Last name. There. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get my settings ready. Again, inches should be your default. And then as far as presets, you probably have it at 3D, 40, 45. But if you want a big enough space to work with this, I'm going to suggest that you probably do a 12 by 12 and then make that your default for now. Boom, nice big space for us to work with. Okay, so with our cutting boards, I'm going to take the dimensions that are most common that people use, which is 8 inches by 11 inches. So let me move my camera over here. Ooh, busy. Okay, so remember with your cutting board, you're going to have a trench. You're going to have a hole to allow the stuff to fall up through. And then you need to have multi pieces of wood to be able to make the strips. So when we make our cutting board here, when you make the sketch that you're going to go with, you want to you want to be able to show the strips, and you can pick whatever colors you want to show that. So I'm going to go with a real simple cutting board that's going to be 8 inches wide, 11 inches long. That's what I'm going to go with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it real simple. I'm going to do 2 different colors, and I'm going to make the strips 2 inches each. So that means I'm going to need 4 strips, 2 of one color, 2 of another color. So I'm going to go ahead and bring my first piece down here, and I'm going to make my width of my cutting board piece, or the strip of my cutting board, 2 inches, and I'm going to make it, 11 inches long. Okay, so there's my first piece. Now again, it defaults to 1 inch thick. I believe the max we told you is 3/4 of an inch. So I'm going to do 0.75. Okay. I'm going to give it more of a wood, dark wood looking color. And I'm going to need 2 of those. So I'm going to control or copy and paste, control C, control V, keep them next to each other. And then since I know the other strips are going to be the same, I'm going to copy and paste this, change the color to a light looking wood color, and then copy and paste that one. Okay. So I got all my pieces together, which is perfect. So when I put these together, they should make a board that's 8 inches wide by 11 inches long. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to want them to go opposites. Okay, just like that. So I'm going to make sure my 2 pieces join together right next to each other. That looks good. I'm going to put the dark one right after it. Looks like I got to knock it down 1 bump so that it sits together. There we go. And then I'll bring this one over so it's touching. There we go. And make sure they're all lined up. Perfect. So once I have this, I'm going to highlight it and I'm going to group them together. And again, I got to click on solid and click multicolor so I can see my pieces. Now, if I move it together, we'll see that we have a board that's 8 by 11. Perfect. So now what we're going to do is we're going to include our trench. So I'm going to show you how we can make the trench on here. And then we are going to create a hole in here as well. Okay. So let's first go ahead and do the trench. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to slide the cutting board over. Again, you guys can stop the video at any time, pause, go back, whatever you need. Let me move myself over here. Oh, I did the big move. So anyways, we're going to copy and paste this. So copy and paste. And what we're going to do is we're going to need one that's a shrunk in, a smaller version of this so we can make our trench. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the dimensions of this example board. I'm going to go 1 inch in. So I'm going to go from 8 to 7 and 11 to 10. Okay. So if you look, it's just a smaller version, and you'll kind of see what we're going to do here is we are going to drop that right on top of there. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make another copy of this, Control C, Control V, and I'm going to do a 1/2 inch less. Okay. So this one was 7 by 10. So I'm going to do a 1/2 inch less. So it's going to be 6.5. And this 10 is going to be 9.5. All right. You see how I did that? So the next thing I'm going to want to do, I got to move myself out of the way. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make this a hole. Okay, we're going to cut this out. So I want to overlap these two pieces. So I'm going to highlight just these two, and we're going to go to L for align. We're going to align it to be centered and centered. So as you can see now, everything is centered together. Now if I highlight this and I do Control G to group it, you can see here that I now have a frame. Okay, that's going to be our trench. That's what we're going to do. We're going to be taking out of the wood. So again, the trench doesn't go all the way through. It's just going to go down a little bit into our wood. Remember, if you're cutting on a cutting board, you have juices like a tomato or something like that. The juices will fall into the trenches and not make a mess everywhere. So that's what we're creating. So we're going to have to group these two together. But before we do that, we got to make this trench a hole since we're going to be cutting it out. Okay. Now we're going to highlight them and align them again. So L for align. And again, same thing. Center it. There we go. So before we do anything else, we're going to take that trench that we made. Just click on the trench. We're going to grab that black node there, and we're going to pull it up. Now, as you can see, I pulled up too far. Now I'm above it. So what I want to do is I want to pull it all the way to the top like we have there. And then we're just going to go down 1/8 of an inch. So now that we have our trench sitting right on top of the wood, grab that arrow and we're going to drop it down 1/8 of an inch. You can see there it says -1/8. So now we're good to go. So I'm going to release, and that's what our trench is going to look like. Now, when you get into the actual CNC work, we could round the corners, stuff like that, but this is just an example, so we're not too worried about that. So again, we have to highlight it and Control G or click group up here to group it. And there we go. You can see our trench in it. Okay. Last thing you need to have on your cutting board is a hole. So I think the neatest looking hole is usually more of an oval. And you can then kind of use it like a handle, kind of carry around the cutting board that way. So this one, we're going to want to actually go all the way through. So I'm going to grab a cylinder. I'm going to drag it onto the board wherever we are here. We can see it's tall. I'm going to make it just taller. We're going to make it a hole. Okay. So with our cutting board right now, I'm going to make this longer. So our board is 8 inches across. Remember, we have an inch off on both sides. So we're really down to 6 inches of space here. So I'm just going to go with a 4-inch width hole. And you can see it made it oval. I'll actually go to top so you can see it. And then I want to make it a little wider than 1 inch. So I'm going to do 1 point. Actually, you know what? I'll make it 2 inches. A 2-inch hole. Oh, too big. Let's go with 1.5. There we go. Next, I'm going to put this where I want it to be. So I don't want it to touch the trench, and I want there to be just a little bit of a gap so when we cut with the blade, they don't overlap at all. So I'm just going to kind of bring this up a little bit, and I think that looks good. I'm just going to right-click and move this so I can see it from the side. Yep, that looks like a nice little gap. So now that I have the hole through it the way I want, just to ensure that it goes all the way through, I made it really tall, so I'm just going to drop it down a little bit. So now if you look, it went all the way through like that. So now when I highlight everything and I Control G to group it, my cutting board now has a hole in it. So now I'm going to be able to go over to my Google Doc and I'm going to be able to do screenshots, for all 4 of these. So remember, here's my top view. Here's my front view of the board, my right view of the board, and my isometric view of the board. So I'm going to make sure I got all those good pictures to be able to put onto my doc. If you have any questions through this process, see myself or Mr. Harris. And then again, once this is all done and approved in your packet, you're on your way out to the shop to go ahead and actually physically make your board. Okay, see you later.